I never thought someone I trusted would become the person I feared most. That summer day started like any other, bright, hot, and buzzing with laughter. The air was thick with the smell of sunscreen, grilled meat, and chlorine from the pool. My dad had invited all his closest friends over for the annual backyard party, and as usual, everyone brought their kids too. There were balloons tied to the fence, loud music playing from a speaker near the patio, and a table stacked high with soda cans and fruit punch. I remember sitting on the edge of the pool, legs dangling in the water, watching everyone else enjoy themselves while I felt like I was on the outside looking in. I wasn't shy exactly, more like unsure of where I fit in. I'd always been the quiet one, the kid who preferred books to games, and conversations to parties. But even I could feel the energy that day. It was alive, electric, and full of promise. That's when he walked in. Mr. Daniel, my dad's best friend since college. He was tall, handsome in that older man kind of way, with a deep laugh that made people stop and listen. He wore sunglasses even indoors sometimes, and always smelled like expensive cologne. Everyone loved him, my mom, my cousins, even the neighbors. He had this charm about him, the kind that made you feel like you mattered when he spoke to you. And on that day, for some reason, he seemed extra interested in me. I remember how he came straight over after greeting my dad, gave me a smile that felt warmer than the sun above us, and said, "Hey, champ. You look bored. Let's fix that." His voice was smooth, confident, and for a moment, I forgot how awkward I usually felt around adults. He sat down next to me without waiting for an answer and asked what I liked to do for fun. I told him I read a lot, and instead of brushing me off like most grown-ups did, he actually listened. He even mentioned a book he'd read recently and asked if I'd heard of it. I hadn't, but the fact that he treated me like I was worth talking to made something inside me warm up. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. He stayed close, cracking jokes, making sure I had food, even teaching me how to mix a mocktail with lemonade and mint. It was strange how much attention he gave me, especially when there were so many other kids around. At first, I thought maybe he just liked being nice. Maybe he saw something in me that others didn't. I felt special, seen, and for once, not invisible. When he offered to teach me how to swim better later in the evening, I agreed without hesitation. I couldn't wait. By then, the sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. People were still laughing, still dancing, still having fun. But I barely noticed them anymore. All I could think about was how cool it was that Mr. Daniel wanted to spend time with me. How lucky I was to have someone like him in my life. Then, as the crowd thinned and the noise died down a bit, he came back over, his smile still wide, his eyes still kind. He looked around like he was checking for something, then turned to me and said, "Come on, let's go practice those strokes. We'll use the deep end, no one will bother us there." I hesitated for a second. The deep end was farther away from the main group, almost hidden behind the tall hedges that lined the side of the yard. But I pushed the thought aside. He was just trying to help me get better at swimming, right? So I nodded and followed him without question. As we walked, the music faded behind us, replaced by the soft sound of leaves rustling in the breeze. I remember thinking how peaceful it was out there, how safe I felt. But as we reached the edge of the pool, standing alone beneath the dimming light, something shifted. The air changed. The silence grew heavier. And suddenly, I wasn't sure why he had taken me there. What happened in those few minutes changed everything. I stood there at the deep end of the pool, the water glistening under the soft glow of the evening lights, my heart pounding for no reason I could explain. The laughter and music from the main party felt like they were coming from another world, distant, muffled, unreachable. Mr. Daniel was standing close now, closer than he had been before. I hadn't noticed it until that moment, but he had slowly moved nearer with every step we took. His smile was still there, warm and friendly, but something about it felt different now, almost too big, too practiced, like it didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked around again, just like he had earlier, as if making sure no one was watching. And then he turned to me. "Come on," he said, his voice low, calm. "Let's get in." I hesitated. Shouldn't we wait for someone else? He laughed gently, shaking his head. "No need. It's quiet here, just us. You'll learn better this way." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that this was normal, that he was doing what he said, helping me improve my swimming. But something inside me twisted, a knot forming deep in my gut. Still, I stepped forward, lowering myself into the cool water. It wrapped around my legs, refreshing at first, but then it started to feel heavy, like it was pulling me down. I watched as Mr. Daniel climbed in after me, moving with ease, like he belonged in the water more than on land. He swam over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Okay," he said. "First things first, let's work on your float." I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. I rolled onto my back, letting the water hold me up, staring at the sky above. Stars were beginning to appear, scattered across the dark blue canvas like tiny pinpricks of light. For a second, I tried to focus on them, to calm myself. But then I felt his hand again, not on my shoulder this time, but lower. On my arm, then my chest, gently, like he was adjusting my position. My body stiffened. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I knew I didn't like it. "Relax," he whispered. "You're tensing up. Let the water carry you." I tried. I really did. But my mind was racing, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I wanted to move away, to swim back to the shallow end where people could see us, where someone might notice. But I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped. Then his hand went lower. That's when I realized this wasn't about swimming lessons. This wasn't about helping me get better. It was something else entirely. I don't remember exactly how long it lasted. Time felt warped, stretched thin like an old rubber band ready to snap. All I know is that by the time he finally pulled away, I felt like I wasn't in my own body anymore. Like I had somehow left myself behind in that water, floating lifelessly while he smiled and said, "You did great, champ." His voice was kind, almost proud, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just taken something from me that I didn't give. I climbed out of the pool on shaky legs, the cold air hitting my skin like needles. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I just stood there, dripping wet, hands trembling, stomach churning. He followed me out, drying himself off like nothing had changed. Like I was the same person I'd been 5 minutes ago. Then he leaned in, close enough that I could smell the mint on his breath, and whispered, "This stays between us, okay? No need to make things complicated. You understand." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared at the ground, willing myself to disappear. He patted me on the back, hard enough that it startled me, and said, "Good kid." And just like that, he walked away, back toward the party, back to laughing and talking with everyone else like nothing had happened. I stayed behind, alone, my clothes clinging to me, my body shivering even though the night wasn't cold. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the water, wondering how everything had gone so wrong in such a short amount of time. When I finally made my way back to the party, no one noticed anything was wrong. My dad waved at me from across the yard. My mom handed me a towel without a second glance. Everyone was smiling, laughing, enjoying themselves. Life had continued without me. I sat down on a lawn chair, wrapping the towel tightly around my shoulders, pretending to watch the sunset. But I wasn't seeing it. All I could see was his face. That smile. Those hands. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. I kept asking myself the same question over and over: was it my fault? Had I done something wrong? Had I led him on? Was I supposed to stop him? Could I have stopped him? The thoughts circled like vultures, feeding on my guilt, my fear, my shame. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but the idea of speaking the words out loud terrified me. Who would believe me? What would they say? Would they think I was lying? Would they blame me? So I buried it, deep. I told myself it was a mistake. A misunderstanding. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself it never happened. But no matter how many times I repeated those lies, I knew the truth. Something had changed. Something had broken. And I didn't know how to fix it. I became good at hiding things. Especially from myself. The days after the party passed like a blur, each one folding into the next without meaning or color. I moved through them like a ghost, present but unseen. The world kept spinning, people kept laughing, life kept going, but I felt detached, as if I were watching everything unfold behind thick glass. No one noticed the shift in me. No one saw how I flinched when someone touched my shoulder unexpectedly, or how I avoided being alone with any adult for more than a few seconds. No one saw the way I stared at my reflection in the mirror and wondered who that boy was anymore. At school, I smiled when I was supposed to. I nodded during conversations. I gave the right answers in class. But inside, I was crumbling. There was this heavy silence inside me, like a scream trapped behind locked doors. It echoed in my chest, loud and painful, but no one could hear it. And I wasn't ready to let them. Mr. Daniel didn't come around much after that summer. I remember hearing my dad mention something about him traveling for work, maybe even moving out of town. At first, I felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe now I could forget. Maybe now the memories would fade. But they didn't. They clung to me like shadows, stretching longer every time I tried to run from them. I started avoiding places where I thought he might show up. If we were invited to a family gathering, I made excuses not to go. If my parents mentioned visiting his house, I suddenly had homework I needed to finish. I told myself it was because I didn't want to see him again, but deep down, there was another fear. What if he acted like nothing happened? What if he smiled at me the same way he always did, like he hadn't changed my life forever? That fear was worse than anger. Because if he acted normal, then maybe I was the one who had imagined it all. Maybe I was the one who had done something wrong. Time passed, weeks turned into months, and soon, the summer was just a distant memory. But the pain stayed fresh. I couldn't talk about it. Couldn't write it down. Couldn't even cry about it. So instead, I buried it. Deeper, layer by layer, until I almost convinced myself that I was fine. But I wasn't. I withdrew from everyone. My friends noticed, but I told them I was just stressed with school. I stopped hanging out after class. I stopped answering messages. I spent most of my free time in my room, scrolling through my phone without really seeing anything, listening to music that matched the numbness inside me. And then came the nightmares. They started slowly, just flashes of images, quick and blurry, like scenes from a movie I couldn't quite remember. But soon, they became more vivid. I'd wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, heart pounding, unable to breathe. Sometimes I'd dream about the pool, the water swallowing me whole. Other times, I'd feel his hands on me again, hear his voice whispering in my ear, telling me not to tell anyone. After waking up from those dreams, I'd sit on the edge of my bed, clutching my knees to my chest, trying to remind myself that it was just a dream. That he wasn't here, that I was safe. But was I? The worst part was the guilt. Not the kind that comes from doing something wrong, the kind that comes from staying silent. I knew other people had been hurt by him. I knew he hadn't stopped just because he stopped coming around us. But I never said anything. I never spoke up. I let him walk away without consequence. And every day that passed without me saying a word, I hated myself a little more. I started questioning everything, my sexuality, my worth, my ability to trust. I used to think love was something pure, something beautiful. But now, whenever I thought about relationships, all I could see was that night by the pool. I didn't know how to separate real affection from manipulation. Every touch felt dangerous. Every smile felt fake. Then, one day, everything changed. It was during lunch break. I was sitting alone near the back of the cafeteria, picking at my food, when I saw him, a boy from my class, walking with a group of friends. He had soft eyes, kind-looking, and for some reason, he caught my gaze and held it. Just for a second, but in that moment, something stirred inside me. A feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was just a simple, quiet realization that not everyone looked at me the way Mr. Daniel did. That not every boy was a threat. That maybe, just maybe, there was still kindness left in the world. I didn't talk to him that day. Or the next. But over time, I found myself noticing him more often. How he laughed with his friends. How he helped a girl pick up her books when she dropped them. How he sat alone sometimes too, just like me. Something about him made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. And that scared me. Because if I allowed myself to feel something real again, then I'd have to admit that I had lost something precious once before. I'd have to face the truth I had been running from. So I stayed quiet. But the feelings didn't go away. They lingered, growing stronger with each glance, each shared moment in class, each accidental brush of our arms when we passed each other in the hallway. And slowly, painfully, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else. I liked boys. Not just like them, I wanted to be close to them. To hold their hands, to laugh with them, to share secrets and moments and maybe even kisses. But how could I ever let myself fall for someone when the only experience I had with another man had left me broken? How could I trust anyone when the person I trusted the most had betrayed me? These questions haunted me, circling endlessly in my mind. I didn't have answers. I didn't even know if I wanted to find them. All I knew was that I was standing at the edge of something new, something terrifying, something beautiful. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump. Maybe not all feelings are meant to hurt. It started with small things, a smile here, a glance there. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Just curiosity. Just admiration. But the more I watched him, the more I realized it wasn't just that. There was something about him, about the way he carried himself, the way his eyes softened when he laughed, the way he never seemed in a rush to impress anyone. He didn't need to. He was already enough. And somehow, without even trying, he made me feel like maybe I could be too. His name was Arjun. We had been in the same class for months, but we had never really spoken before. Not until one afternoon when we were paired together for a group project. It was a simple assignment, write a short story based on a theme our teacher gave us. Nothing big, but sitting across from him at the library table, watching him tap his pen against his notebook as he thought, I felt something shift inside me. We talked for hours. About books, about music, about stupid movies we liked. He had this easy way of making conversation, like he wasn't trying to impress me, just genuinely wanted to know who I was. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to hide behind walls or pretend to be someone else. I could just be. When we finished the assignment, I expected that to be it. Back to silence, back to distance. But it wasn't. We kept running into each other between classes. Sometimes by accident, sometimes not. One day, he sat beside me during lunch without asking, pulled out his sandwich, and said, "Hey." That was it. No explanation, no awkwardness. Just, "Hey." And I found myself looking forward to those moments. To seeing his face in the hallway. To hearing his voice call my name. To the way he always remembered what kind of coffee I liked when we went to the cafe near school. It was little things, but they mattered. They made me feel real again. Still, I held back. Every time I felt myself getting too close, I pulled away. I didn't want to get hurt again. I didn't want to open up only to have someone take advantage of me. So I stayed guarded. I let him be my friend, but I refused to let myself imagine anything more. But Arjun was patient. He never pushed. He never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. If I got quiet, he didn't pry. If I canceled plans last minute, he didn't make a big deal out of it. He just waited. And slowly, painfully, I started to trust him. One evening, after finishing another project together, he offered to walk me home. It was late, the sky painted in deep purples and oranges, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. We walked in silence at first, the soft crunch of gravel beneath our feet the only sound between us. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped and looked at me. "You know," he said quietly, "you don't have to be okay all the time." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, shoving his hands into his pockets. "You always seem like you're holding something in. Like you're afraid to let people see the real you." I swallowed hard. "Maybe I am." He nodded like he understood. "That's okay. You don't have to explain it to me. But just so you know, whenever you're ready, I'm here." Something about the way he said it, not pushy, not demanding, made my chest tighten. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to collapse into his arms and let go of all the pain I had been carrying for so long. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I just whispered, "Thank you." He smiled softly. "Anytime." We kept walking, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone anymore. Over the next few weeks, we grew closer. We spent more time together, studying at the library, grabbing snacks after school, watching dumb YouTube videos late at night while texting each other through them. He became my safe place, the one person I could talk to without feeling like I had to filter myself. But still, there were moments when the past crept in. When I would flinch if he touched my arm. When I would freeze if someone stood too close. When I would suddenly pull away if things got too personal. Arjun noticed. Of course he did, but he never said anything. He just gave me space. Let me move at my own pace. Until one day, he didn't. We were sitting on the rooftop of his building, watching the city lights flicker below us. The night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the occasional laughter from somewhere nearby. It was peaceful, quiet, safe. He turned to me, his expression serious now. Can I ask you something? I hesitated. Depends. Why do you keep pushing people away? I stiffened. I don't. Yes, you do. His voice was gentle, but firm. You let people get close, but the second things start to matter, you shut down. Why? I looked away, gripping the edge of the rooftop ledge. My heart was pounding. This was the moment I had been dreading. The moment where I would either open up or run away. My voice cracked. I don't know how to be close to someone without being scared. He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out, placing a hand over mine. You don't have to tell me anything right now. But just know, whatever happened to you, it doesn't define you. You're allowed to heal. You're allowed to love. You're allowed to be happy. Tears burned behind my eyes. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I deserved those things. But the weight of everything I had buried for so long was too much. I couldn't say the words. I couldn't tell him what had happened. So instead, I whispered, I'm trying. And he squeezed my hand gently. That's all I need. We sat there for a while longer, the city stretching out around us, the stars blinking above like tiny promises. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe in something again. Not love, not yet, but hope, and that was enough. Sometimes the truth finds a way out. It started with a whisper, something I overheard my parents talking about late one night when they thought I was already asleep. I had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying another nightmare through my mind like an old movie stuck on repeat. Then came the muffled voices from the living room, low and urgent, barely audible through the walls. At first, I didn't think much of it. Parents always had things to discuss, work, money, maybe even something about my future. But then I heard a name that made my blood run cold. Mr. Daniel. I sat up slowly, heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My hands clenched around the edge of my blanket as I strained to hear more, every muscle in my body tightening. He just disappeared, my dad said, his voice tight with confusion. No explanation, no goodbye, just packed up and left. There was a pause before my mom responded, her tone quieter now. You know what people are saying, right? What do you mean? Dad asked, but there was hesitation in his voice, like he already knew. Mom sighed. They're saying someone else came forward. That it wasn't just. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. The room went silent again, and so did my breath. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs in a rush, and for a moment, I couldn't move. It wasn't just me. He hadn't stopped after me. Someone else had gone through the same thing, maybe worse. And I had done nothing. Said nothing. Let him walk away while I buried my pain under layers of guilt and silence. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not now. Not here. I threw off my blanket and got up, moving quietly toward the door. I pressed my ear against it, listening to their conversation continue. I just can't believe it, Dad muttered. He was my best friend. How could I not see something like this? You weren't supposed to, Mom said gently. That's how people like him operate. They hide it well. There was another long silence, and then Dad spoke again, his voice thick with something I couldn't quite place. If it's true, if he really hurt someone else. His words trailed off, and I didn't wait to hear the rest. I stumbled back to my bed and collapsed onto it, pulling my knees to my chest. My mind was spinning, racing between anger, shame, fear, and something else, something heavier than all of it combined. Grief. Not for Mr. Daniel, not anymore, but for the version of myself I had lost that summer day. For the boy who used to believe in kindness, in trust, in love. That boy was gone now, replaced by someone who flinched at touch, who avoided eye contact, who carried secrets like bricks tied to his ankles. And worst of all, I realized I had let it happen. I had convinced myself that staying silent was the only way to survive. That no one would believe me. That I would be blamed. That speaking up would make things worse. But now I knew the truth. Silence didn't protect me. It protected him. And because of that silence, someone else had suffered. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, knocking me off balance. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something until the pain in my chest matched the ache in my fists. But I just lay there, shaking, tears slipping down my face without permission. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely spoke to anyone, barely ate, barely slept. I moved through school like a ghost, going through the motions without actually being present. Even Arjun noticed. You've been quiet, he said one afternoon as we sat outside during lunch. More than usual. I shrugged, picking at the wrapper of my sandwich. Just tired. He studied me for a long moment, his brow furrowed. Is everything okay? I opened my mouth to say yes, to give him the same answer I gave everyone else. But the words caught in my throat. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I could lie anymore. So instead of answering, I just looked at him. Really looked at him, at the concern in his eyes, the softness in his expression. The way he never pushed, never forced me to talk before I was ready. And suddenly, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told him everything. Every word came rushing out like a dam had finally broken. I told him about the pool party. About Mr. Daniel. About what happened. About the lies I told myself afterward. About the nightmares. About the guilt. About how I had convinced myself it was my fault. About how I had buried it so deep that I almost forgot it was real. And when I finished, I braced myself for the worst. For disbelief. For blame. For rejection. But none of it came. Instead, Arjun reached for my hand and held it tightly. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, letting the weight of my words settle between us. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "I'm so sorry." That was all it took. The floodgates opened. I broke down completely, sobbing into my hands, years of bottled up emotions finally spilling out. I cried for the boy I used to be. I cried for the pain I had hidden. I cried for the truth I had kept locked inside for far too long. And Arjun stayed with me the entire time. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't tell me to stop crying. He just held my hand, letting me fall apart in his presence without judgment. When I finally calmed down, my cheeks were soaked, my throat raw. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my shirt and looked at him, expecting to see pity or discomfort. But all I saw was understanding. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "I promise." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I believed him yet. But for the first time, I wanted to. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I had told someone. I had spoken the truth out loud, and the world hadn't ended. I hadn't been thrown away. I hadn't been blamed. Maybe healing wouldn't erase what happened. But maybe, just maybe, it could help me live beyond it. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that I deserved that chance. Telling the truth doesn't erase the past, but it helps you live beyond it. The morning after I told Arjun everything, I woke up feeling like a different person. Not healed, not even close, but lighter somehow, like I had been carrying a backpack full of bricks for years and finally set it down. My eyes were still puffy from crying, my throat still sore, but something inside me had shifted. The secret that had held me hostage for so long was no longer mine alone. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know how my parents would react if I ever told them. I didn't know how to explain something I barely understood myself. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. So, I made a decision. I was going to tell them. Not because I wanted attention or revenge. Not because I thought it would fix everything. But because I needed to stop living in silence. I needed to stop letting fear control me. And most of all, I needed to start healing. It wasn't easy. The words stuck in my throat when I sat them down at the kitchen table that evening. My dad was sipping his tea, my mom flipping through the mail, both completely unaware of the storm about to hit their quiet little world. "I need to talk to you," I said quietly. They looked up, confused but listening. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. I told them about the pool party. About Mr. Daniel. About what he did to me. About the lies I told myself afterward. About the guilt. About the nightmares. About how I had watched him walk away while I buried my pain under layers of shame. And then I waited. For disbelief. For anger. For rejection. But none of it came. Instead, there was silence. Long, heavy, unbearable. My dad's teacup clinked against the saucer as he set it down. My mom's hands trembled slightly as she reached across the table and took mine. Then my dad spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I shrugged, tears already forming again. I was scared. He nodded slowly, like he understood. Then he stood up and pulled me into a hug. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just arms around me, holding me tight, grounding me in reality. He didn't say anything else, just held me like he was trying to absorb every bit of pain I had carried alone for so long. My mom wiped her eyes and whispered, "We're here now." That's all that matters. They didn't have all the answers. They didn't know what to do next. But they listened. They believed me. And that was more than I had ever hoped for. The days that followed were hard. Talking about it once didn't magically make everything better. If anything, it made things worse before they got better. I had to face the reality of what had happened all over again. I had to deal with the memories that came rushing back now that I had let them out. At school, people noticed the change in me. I wasn't hiding behind silence anymore. I wasn't pretending to be fine. Arjun stayed by my side, never pushing, always listening. When I broke down in the hallway between classes, he was there to pull me aside and hold my hand until I could breathe again. Some people didn't understand. Some friends drifted away, unsure of how to act around me. Some asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. Some gave me looks filled with pity instead of support. But others surprised me. One girl I barely knew approached me after class and handed me a piece of paper with a list of helplines and local support groups. She didn't say much, just smiled and said, "You're not alone." That night, I looked up the numbers and called one. The woman who answered was kind. She didn't rush me. She didn't push me to say more than I was comfortable with. She just listened. And when I finished talking, she said, "You're brave for reaching out. Healing isn't linear. You'll have good days and bad days. But you don't have to go through this alone." I hung up the phone and cried again. But this time, it felt different. Like maybe I was finally starting to believe her. Over the next few weeks, I started attending therapy sessions. At first, I hated it. Sitting in a room with a stranger asking me questions I didn't want to answer felt pointless. But slowly, painfully, I began to open up. I talked about the guilt. About the shame. About how I used to blame myself. About how I was afraid to trust anyone again. My therapist didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me to forget what happened or pretend it didn't matter. Instead, she helped me understand that what I went through wasn't my fault. That I hadn't done anything wrong. That healing wasn't about erasing the past, it was about learning to live with it without letting it define me. She also encouraged me to write. So I did. I wrote letters I never sent. Poems filled with pain and hope. Journal entries where I poured out every thought trapped inside me. Writing became my escape, my way of making sense of the chaos inside my head. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of me before it happened, that boy was gone forever. But someone new, someone stronger, someone who had survived. One afternoon, I showed Arjun some of my writing. He read each word carefully, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at me and said, "You're going to be okay." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. But there was none, so I nodded. "Yeah, maybe I am." That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom, staring at my reflection. I saw the dark circles under my eyes, the tiredness etched into my features. But I also saw something else. Strength. Not the kind that comes from being untouched by pain. The kind that comes from surviving it. I touched my own face gently, whispering to myself the words I had been too afraid to say for far too long. "I'm not broken." And for the first time, I almost believed it. I wasn't fully healed. I didn't know if I ever would be. But I was learning to forgive myself, learning to trust again, learning that I deserved love, even after everything. And that was enough. Because healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering that you were still here. Still standing, still alive, and still capable of happiness. Not every love story starts easy, but the ones that survive are worth everything. Time passed, slow at first and then all at once. The days after I opened up about what happened didn't suddenly become perfect, but they became lighter. Like the sky after a long storm, still cloudy in places, but with glimpses of blue peeking through. Healing wasn't a straight path. Some mornings I woke up feeling strong, ready to face the world. Other mornings, I stayed under the covers for hours, replaying old memories like broken films looping in my head. But now, I had people beside me. My parents, even if they didn't always know what to say. Arjun, who never left my side, even when I pushed him away. And slowly, painfully, I started learning how to live again. And somewhere in the middle of all that pain and growth, something else began to bloom, something I hadn't expected. Love. It didn't come all at once. It was quiet, almost hesitant, like it was afraid to scare me off. But it was there, in the way Arjun looked at me sometimes, not with pity or pressure, but with real care. In the way he waited for me to be ready, never rushing anything, never making me feel like I owed him anything just because I had told him my truth. We were sitting on the rooftop one evening, the city lights flickering below us like tiny stars scattered across the earth. The air was warm, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden downstairs. We had been talking for hours, mostly about nothing, stupid movies we liked, songs that reminded us of certain memories, dreams we had for the future. But then there was a pause. A long one, not awkward, just full. Like something was waiting to be said. He turned to me then, his voice softer than usual. "Do you ever think about what it would be like to be in love?" I blinked, surprised by the question. I had thought about it, more than I wanted to admit. But the idea still scared me. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't know if I could handle it. Every time I imagined being close to someone, the past crept in, whispering doubts in my ear. "I don't know," I admitted. "I mean, I want to. But it's hard." He nodded like he understood. "Because of what happened." I swallowed hard. "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment, then reached out and took my hand. Just held it. No pressure. No expectations. Just warmth. Real, steady warmth. "You don't have to rush it," he said gently. "You don't owe anyone your heart before you're ready. But if it helps, I'm not going anywhere." I looked at him then, really looked at him. At the kindness in his eyes, the patience in his expression. At the way he never tried to fix me, only ever tried to see me. And something inside me shifted. "Sometimes," I whispered, "I forget what it feels like to be touched without fear." He squeezed my hand lightly. "Then let me remind you. That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't hold each other. We just sat there, hands intertwined, watching the city breathe beneath us. But in that silence, something changed. Not big, not dramatic, just real. From that point on, things between us started to shift. Slowly, carefully. We didn't label anything right away. Didn't rush into declarations or promises we weren't ready to make. Instead, we built trust, piece by piece, moment by moment. There were still moments of fear. Times when I flinched if he moved too quickly. When I pulled away if things got too intense. When I doubted whether I deserved someone as good as him. But he never made me feel broken. He just gave me space, letting me move at my own pace. One afternoon, we went for a walk near the lake behind his house. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water. We walked barefoot along the shore, our feet sinking into the soft sand. Out of nowhere, he stopped and turned to me. "I used to think love was this grand thing," he said. "Big gestures, big declarations, fireworks, all that stuff." I tilted my head. "You don't anymore." He shook his head. "No. Now I think it's in the little things. Like walking beside someone when they don't want to talk. Or holding their hand when they're scared. Or just being there when they fall apart." I stared at him, my chest tightening. He continued, "I don't need fireworks. I just need you." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, at the way he said those words like they meant everything. So I did the only thing I could. I kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was soft, hesitant, like I was testing the waters to see if it was safe. And when he kissed me back, just as gently, just as carefully, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Truly, deeply safe. After that, things between us grew stronger. Not without struggle, not without doubt, but real. Honest. We argued sometimes, like any couple. We misunderstood each other. We made mistakes. But we also laughed. A lot. We shared secrets. We held each other when one of us had a bad day. We built something together, not perfect, but ours. And for the first time in my life, I realized what real love felt like. It wasn't about possession. It wasn't about control. It was about choice. About choosing someone every single day, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. Because they made you feel seen. Because they loved you even when you were messy, even when you were broken, even when you didn't know how to love yourself. One night, we were lying in bed, tangled in blankets, the moonlight spilling through the window. He turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Do you think you deserve me?" he asked quietly. I hesitated. That question had haunted me for so long. For years, I believed I didn't deserve happiness. I believed I had lost the right to love because of what had happened to me. I believed I was damaged beyond repair. But looking at him now, hearing the way he said it, not like a challenge, not like a test, but like a genuine question, I realized something. Maybe I did deserve him. Maybe I deserved love. Maybe I deserved happiness. So I took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm starting to believe I do." He smiled, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Good." And in that moment, I knew. This was different. This was real. And for the first time in my life, I was finally ready to let myself fall. If you're hurting, scared, or lost, you're not alone. And healing is possible. We don't always get to choose what happens to us. Life throws things at us that we never see coming: pain, betrayal, fear, loss. Sometimes it feels like the weight of everything is too much to carry. Like no one would understand even if we tried to explain. Like we're trapped in a silence that's been forced on us, unable to scream for help even when we need it most. But here's the truth: your story matters. No matter how broken you feel, no matter how long you've carried something alone, no matter how many times you've told yourself it was your fault, you are not to blame. You never were. I used to think I had to live with my pain forever. That I had to bury it deep and pretend it never happened. I thought speaking up would make things worse. I thought no one would believe me. I thought I deserved to suffer in silence because I didn't know how to fight back. But I learned something over time. Something powerful. Healing doesn't erase the past. It doesn't undo what was taken from you. But it gives you the chance to rebuild. To reclaim parts of yourself that were stolen. To learn that love, real love, isn't about control or manipulation. It's about choice. About trust. About safety. And maybe most importantly, healing teaches you that you are not alone. There are people who will listen. People who will believe you. People who will stand beside you even when you fall apart. You just have to let them in. You just have to speak the words, even if they tremble as they leave your lips. Because once you do, something shifts. You start to breathe a little easier. You start to sleep through the night without waking up in a panic. You look in the mirror and see someone stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for being. You begin to believe, really believe, that happiness is still possible for you. That's where I am now. Not completely healed, maybe I never will be. But I'm healing. Slowly. Painfully. Beautifully. I found someone who loves me not despite my scars, but because of them. Someone who knows my story and still chooses to stay. Someone who reminds me every day that I deserve good things. That I deserve kindness. That I deserve to be happy. And if you're listening to this right now, if you're watching this video because something inside you recognizes this pain, I want you to know something. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not alone. You are not weak for hurting. And you are not wrong for wanting to be loved. If you've gone through something like this, or anything that has left you feeling trapped and afraid, please don't keep it buried. Find someone you trust, a friend, a sibling, a parent, a teacher, a counselor. Call a helpline. Reach out to an online community. Do whatever you need to do to let the truth out. Even if it scares you. Because the silence only holds power when you give it permission to. And once you break it, once you finally speak, that's when your healing begins. So if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel seen, if it reminded you that there's hope waiting for you, please take a moment to like this video. Please subscribe so more people like you can find stories like mine. And if you feel comfortable, drop a heart emoji in the comments, not just for me, but for everyone else who might be watching and wondering if they're the only ones going through this. Because you're not. And if you're ready, if you're standing at the edge of telling your own truth, just know this: I believe in you. I believe in your strength. I believe in your voice. And I believe in your right to heal, to grow, and to love again. Your story is important. Your pain is valid. And your future, it's still yours to write. Thank you for watching.